Hey, 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 good evening. This is Happy Hour with Dr. Lisa, and I am your host. I am Dr. Lisa. I am a psychologist, and I'm with you today to talk about all of my experiences while growing up in psychology. And this is the third part. This is a part of my blog, which is located at Lisa, Lisa, Liggins, Liggins, Chambers, CHAMBERS.com. The blog is where I write down all of my experiences in psychology in hopes that you will read the blog first and then come to the podcast so we can talk about some of these wonderful children that I've met along my journey. You can ask me any questions. You can ask them live on air on Podbean. You can also see me live on Instagram at Kids Can See Ghosts at Gmail. I'm sorry, that's the Gmail address, kidscansee@gmail.com. The handle for Instagram is at Kids Can See Ghosts Can You. So if you want to hear these stories live, you can do so. I am on two different Instagram pages right now, live. So you can see me if you want to in person. I think these stories are better told in person, but that's just me. So if you have questions, make sure you get them to me. I do answer questions. My last blog that I just released was all about some of the questions that I am getting on social media. So I compiled some of those and put them in a blog for you last week. I am so happy to talk to all of you, but I am going to have to change my time for this podcast temporarily till about 5:30. That's the school year for you. So I am going to log in next week at about 5:30 to see if that time works better for my new work schedule. If not, it'll be 6 o'clock on Wednesdays. So we'll see how 5:30 works. And if I need to change it to 6 o'clock, I will do that and let you all know. So today we're going to talk about blog 29, Growing Up in Psychology, the third part. And this is where I'm going to talk to you about what happened from part two, what happened to me. And the reason that I decided to do these blogs is because I want for you all to understand how I grew up in psychology, which prepared me to actually work with kids who can see ghosts. Because again, this is not something that I was trained to do. It just kind of happened. And let me give you an example, a live example. Recently, I believe it or not, I told you guys my confirmation for doing this podcast and also this blog comes in many different forms. And most recently, I spoke to not just one, not just two, but at least three people who didn't know that I had a blog or a podcast and talked to me about some of their experiences. One since childhood, the other one more recent, and then the next one just kind of off and on with seeing ghosts. And one of them actually saw some of the things that some of these kids saw over the years, and there's no way that this person knew a lot of the stuff that happened to me with these kids and that I know. Now, you guys know what I write. There's a lot of stuff that I don't write. Some of that is to maintain confidentiality. The other part is I write it when it comes to me. So something that this person said to me came to me and I went, bingo, I need to write a blog. So my inspiration comes from a lot of different places. What's so interesting about these individuals is that they had some of the same stories that the kids have. So I am going to write about these things on the blog soon. I'm not ready to do it now because it's too close to when these individuals told me about him. So it has to wait because remember, I'm always a psychologist first, so I have to maintain their confidentiality, even if they're not my clients. And these are actually adults. So it's definitely imperative for me, to keep them guarded. Okay. But yeah, so inspiration comes in many forms. So the more that I meet people now, the more that I'm learning more from adults. So that made me happy. Also kind of scared. I thought, here we go. And so I told you guys I wait until people tell me stuff that I know just to see if they can really do this or not. And one of them called out some of the angels that children have told me around me, but had no idea that I affectionately named some of the angels, like the angel in the tree. So this gets really, really good when I write it up. So a lot of you actually have these experiences as well. So if you want to write them to me, I will certainly talk about them, or you can join the podcast and talk about them yourself. So I'll be sharing their stories pretty soon. Not yet. All right. So what happened to me when, remember I talked about a coworker that jumped up at me. Now, mind you, I was heavily pregnant. I may have been about 8 months pregnant, and she jumped at me. She was sitting down and she jumped up in the chair at me, and she was just kind of verbally aggressive. So she jumped out of her chair toward me, and that's what happened. So I want you to keep in mind I was very heavily pregnant and was not too thrilled about this person jumping up at me that way. And when she jumped up at me, I did tell her to sit down because it's just a bad idea. One, I don't have problems pressing charges toward people, but she didn't know, even pregnant, if I was going to attack her back. I always tell kids the same thing, as adults, they forget that we've been through a lot of things, especially when they were their age. So I always tell kids, adults make mistakes too. You guys are jumping at teachers and jumping at principals. And if one of them, has a reaction toward you that way, obviously we would get into a lot of trouble. But sometimes it's just raw instinct, right? Because some of these kids nowadays are really aggressive, and that would be verbally and physically. And so you hear about teachers. I remember once a teacher actually did hit one of the kids back. The boy punched her hard in the jaw. She hauled off and punched him back. Now, she didn't get fired or anything like that because we were all there and we knew it was a reaction. I mean, we don't want to have that kind of reaction, with children, obviously. But some of these kids, like I walk in my job and they're like 2 times my size, So sometimes that happens. So she didn't know what I was capable of doing, right? She didn't. So I told her to sit back down, and that situation really bothered me. It didn't just bother me, it bothered my family a lot because it really pissed my family off because I was pregnant and this woman jumped up at me. And so, I have to say she was pretty lucky that none of my family members could get to her because there was no reason for this woman to jump at me. I only asked her a question. So she had some type of animosity toward me that I didn't even know existed. And so, I have to tell you, um, every everybody was pretty calm. I shared my side of the story that I walked in, asked a question, and for some reason, this woman just decided to aggressively jump toward me. Um, but you know who was reprimanded in that situation? It was me, and I will never forget it. I was told to stay away from her. I was told, you know, just continue to do my job. A lot of things. And I was sitting there thinking, wow, I'm the pregnant one. I'm the one who asked the question. She had an issue toward me that I didn't even know, yet I'm the one getting in trouble. And this was probably the second time that that happened to me, as I indicated in the blog. The first time the woman actually chased me aggressively down the hallway. Um, and I did have a reaction, I'll admit, to that one. And what the way that I reacted to her running behind me was not a good way, but it happened. And so this time, however, I had more to lose. Back then, I was single. I was early 20s. I was still very reactive, like I was when I was in high school. So I didn't have a lot to lose, but this time I had a lot to lose. And so I wasn't going to lose that because it's some person who, has something against me. So this is the second time that happened where I was actually the victim on a job, and I was more reprimanded because when it happened to me when I was younger, I actually lost my job, although this person was the aggressor. This time the person was the aggressor, and I was told that I had to stay away from her. And I'm like, what about me? I never forgot that. And I said, if I ever run into my former, director, I would say, hey, do you remember that? Because do you remember that you guys were telling me to take action this way, but she kind of got off and nothing happened to her. She wasn't suspended. She wasn't asked to leave without pay. There was no investigation. Do you know how many things I could have gotten them on just that situation? A lot. And so, I learned at that point in my young career that it's easy for employers to chastise, an African American employee as opposed to determining the truth about what happened and following through with disciplining those individuals. So that's what I'm going to say about that situation. And I kind of ended it on that note in the blog. But this is what I learned early, and this is what set the tone for some of the strength that I had while working with people later on, like I do now. So it helped me to learn the structure of organizations, how to better conduct myself on the job. There were a lot of lessons. But while I was working there, something really great came out of it. And I met a whole lot of wonderful students. And one of the students a couple of years ago found me after all those years. This is not the first time a student found me, but this is one that set me up to start this podcast. So this is a really wonderful, this was a wonderful student back then who is now a grown man, who is a wonderful friend now. And so we had a really good rapport back then. And you never know the impact that you have on people. And so I didn't realize I had such an impact on this student who actually found me and told me about the impact that I had on him. And so a couple of years passed again, and about, I think in 2021, I actually looked for him. And so we were just kind of chit chatting, catching up on our lives. And, I said that something wasn't going well for me. And I said, and I cannot figure out why this is not going well for me. And I said, and I have exhausted all of my effort. I'm mad about it. I spent thousands of dollars and I just don't know why this won't happen. And he said, and I'll never forget it because it was so powerful to me. He said, sometimes you have to fail at things to figure out what you're really supposed to do. And I said, crap, that's true. Maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this. Maybe I'm supposed to be doing something else. And so I started talking to him about, I was thinking about starting this blog. I was thinking about starting this podcast. And, I don't know if I should talk to people. Some of my stories about kids that see ghosts. And I don't want, my colleagues to think that I'm making stuff up or cuckoo. But then again, I have a whole lot of colleagues that I told this story to and blah, blah, blah. And he said, I think you should do it. I think you should tell the world the stories that you promised that you would tell about these children. So time went on. I wrote the blog, right? Starting last year. Sometime around this time last year, I started thinking about how I wanted to put the blog together based upon that conversation with that person. And then start doing the blog, and a couple of people had encouraged me to do a podcast about it. They're like, you're a good storyteller. You should go ahead and talk about this live on the air and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, no, no. I don't want to be that public with strangers. No, no, no. And this former student said, I think you should give voice to these stories because it makes people fully understand how you got to this point with working with these kind of kids and blah, blah, blah. And so I thought, wow, you never know the impact that people will have in your life too, because he had an impact in my life by telling me to do this. So one of the reasons that um, I started talking about this stuff publicly is based upon what this former student shared with me in that moment. And so, excuse me, I thought to myself when I actually wrote this blog, this is when I grew up in psychology. So, talking to all of you publicly about these experiences is when I said I have finally matured in psychology. You know, it took me 20 plus years to talk to the public on behalf of these children. And now that I'm talking to all of you about it, I feel as if I finally matured in psychology. I have a long way to go as far as learning, so I don't know everything, but I know these kids and I know how to work with them. And since I started talking to you all about these children, more parents, more children, more strangers have talked to me and I have more experiences. So I am publicly going to thank the initials GM for giving me the courage to talk to everyone about all of these experiences. And so after I talked to him, you know, I started thinking back on some of the things that I've gone through in psychology. And so when I wrote these blogs, um, one of the other things I was thinking was that it allows me to also be a voice for students that I train in psychology, but also other individuals, for example, in this blog, who may have been treated unfairly, just the things that I've learned. And that's just not race, that's gender, you know, that is socioeconomic status and many other, you know, ways that people can be discriminated against or face challenging times. But I've learned how to cope with those things and how to pride myself, of course, with working all kinds of people. So believe me when I tell you, psychology is not a rosy field. Are the benefits good? Absolutely, once you understand how to actually assist people with their daily lives. And so I think what I want to convey to all of you is that negative experiences were important to me. So that one person who challenged me with regard to, in the blog that I talked about, with regard to, you're not helping the kids because you are believing that they believe in ghosts. With the people who send me messages and say, why are you telling people to pray or to believe in God? Have you ever been possessed? If you haven't been possessed, and you don't know how hard it is, and God is just not the answer. So some people would be offended, you know, if other people didn't agree with them, or if people voice opinions that are not like yours. I'm not offended by that stuff. I think that negative experiences are important for you because they help you learn, they help you develop, they help you grow. And even negative experiences are a testimony. So a lot of the experiences that I talk to you all about have been a snapshot of my journey in psychology. So I tell you guys about these things too, because I want you to understand that there are a ton of experiences that I can also talk about that have been negative. And these kids that I work with, they have a lot of negative experiences, a ton of them, because a lot of people don't believe them, you know, and teaching them how to manage this problem, because it is, with adults and other kids telling them that they're crazy or that they make this stuff up, is my way of giving back to them by believing in them and telling the world about their stories. And so I also teach them how to have these, how to cope when those experiences happen. So some of these kids want to give up. You know, somebody was telling me today that they tried to end their life twice. Like, I wanted to die twice. And I just looked at her because I don't like hearing that from people. You know, I wanted to die because I didn't want to live anymore. Life was just not worth living, and I wanted it to be over. So you can use your testimony, even your negative experiences sometimes to help other people. And that's what I do. So I don't want you to think that I have everything figured out. It took a long time to get to the point where I am able to share, you know, some of these paranormal experiences with you all and with other people. So when I did meet the student that I talked about above, I met a couple of college students who had paranormal experiences at that time. And sometimes they were very graphic and they caused some of these students to go down the wrong path. And even with those students, there was a part of me that was teaching them how to cope with their gifts in a positive manner. So some developed symptoms of mental illness, and they had symptoms of mental illness for a very long time. Others were dealing with mental illness and the ability to see ghosts, but they were handling both. And some were just dealing with the experience of seeing ghosts. Sometimes it interfered in their academics. Because they didn't know how to control their ability. And so they weren't good with balancing this gift and studying. So if you think about it, it's kind of like you're reading a book and then you look up and bam, these kids are seeing ghosts. This actually happened to somebody at my job today, which is one of the stories that I'm going to talk about. And so I don't like that kind of interference for anyone, especially young people. Um, the dark angels that people see don't always make people do heinous acts of crime. Some of you guys that send me messages about crime shows and stuff like that, sure, you know, that stuff can be the result of dark angels, but it can also be the result of mental illness, or it can also be a choice. You have to decipher which one. As far as some of the kids that I worked with, sometimes the dark angels that they would see would push them to do things like selling drugs to get money, would whisper things in their ear about how their shoes look compared to other kids. And so this is something you need to do. You ever, if you could picture, like, you know, like in different shows, how they'll have like a angel on one side and a demon on the other, and it'll say, "Oh, but God loves you. You know, you don't need to do these things." And the other side would be dark, or a dark angel or demon. It would say, "The kid, you can't get a date without, you know, wearing decent shoes, and the girls won't like you, or the boys will think, you know, you're poor." And you know, most of the kids, I mean, going to high school, if you've been to high school, is very hard. So a lot of, even in college, you know, so a lot of the kids would default to what dark angels would tell them, and that didn't necessarily mean that they had, you know, a mental health impairment. Sometimes it just meant they didn't know how to control what they could do. And so it took a really long time, and it touches my soul, um, when these kids come to me, or when adults now are starting to come to me. I think now more adults are coming to me than kids, you know, about these things. And so actually I was telling, the part of my blog talks about dark angels, the blog today. And so one of the things with dark angels, and I was telling someone today, you know, to cut it out. Stop talking to dark stuff. They're not your friends. This person could see dark angels. I tell you guys all the time, they don't like humans. Stop trying to call them on Ouija boards. They're not your friends. Always remember, as far as biblical teachings go, dark angels are fallen. Dark angels are fallen angels. Fallen means what? You guys know this already. I don't have to teach you. They didn't comply with God's orders in heaven. So they're fallen angels. Their job is to harm humans. They don't like us. Anybody who can see ghosts will tell you that. stay away from them. This person is actually worshiping dark angels. And it drives me nuts internally, and I don't like it. But you gotta accept people for who they are. And if you get approached by someone like this, kid or adult, and you judge them and they know it, for example, worshiping Satan, let them do what they do. If you come off preachy or judging them, you will not be able to help them because they will back away from you. It's how you do it. How you do it, and you can't judge them. Even if you are of God and you feel the darkness, because there are some people who can actually feel dark entities. I can do that. I can do that. I know when there's something around that I don't want to be around. You could deal with that part, but if you really want to help people, you will believe them and you will not push them away. And so, an example of this at the college level is when I was there. A student called me on the phone and said that there was going to be what is it called? A raid, a police raid. And the person saw dark angels like around, when this was happening. And I'm on the phone not knowing what to do. I don't always know what to do. And so I was trying to say, well, you got to comply with the police. You just do what the police ask you to do when they come, blah, blah, blah. If you're innocent, you're innocent. They'll know you're innocent, blah, blah, blah. I didn't know what to say. And so, and then as far as this person seeing like dark angels in the moment, I still didn't know what to say. So I don't have the answer for everything. And in this moment, I didn't have the answer. And so, this is what I mean sometimes diving into, demonic territory can be harmful. This was actually a case where they were really harming, this person. And this person was charged and convicted. I don't know if this person is out or not, but I will say one of the things that I know that this person will tell you is to leave dark angels alone. And after that, we never spoke again. So I don't know what happened, but we never spoke again. So after I went through all of that and learned all the lessons that I needed at the time with adults, in particular college kids, I decided to resign and became a stay-at-home mom. And even during that time, and this was probably about 15 years ago, I still entertained, before all of this happened, I still entertained, how am I going to tell the public about these wonderful kids that I've actually encountered? So I still didn't know, how to deal with it back then. So as you can see, or you can hear, it took me a long time to get on board with doing this. And so, the decision at that point, my family and I made a decision to go to St. Louis. And it was in St. Louis where I started to have far more experiences with kids that can see ghosts. And if you read the blog, some of my early experiences in St. Louis started when I'm going to name the buildings, when I was in buildings one, affiliated with buildings 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because I don't say the company names for obvious reasons. But that's when I had a heck of a time and gained so much knowledge about these kids. And also, this is when a lot of the experiences that I write on this blog are from when I lived in St. Louis, because the kids kept coming to me over and over again. And so, gosh, there's still a lot of stories I haven't written about. I paused for a second because, I just thought of another kid. When I was thinking about building number 4 that I haven't talked about. And I'm going to write that down because I need to tell you guys about it. Building 4, I told you all was all the kids saw a demon in there. Every last kid. And remember, I told you all earlier, the staff even knew that there was a haunting in that building. So I'm gonna tell you more about Building 4 in my blog. So yeah, I have a lot of this stuff. So you think back. So like I'm old enough now to think back in my career, and I have to say I was set up to work with these kids because look, here it is, 25 years later, and today I met some more people who have this ability. I'll just tell you a little bit about something in regard to those individuals. You guys know about the angel in the tree. You know about the angel that stands behind me. There's a third angel that I do not talk about. And the reason I don't talk about it, and this person might be listening to me, the reason I don't talk about it now, hold on, let me go back. This person knew about the third angel. And I have not talked about, and I think I'm going to write it down. I have not talked about the third one because I don't know a whole lot about it. And the funny thing is, when this person saw angels around me, this person said there's actually a third one. And I said, I know, the kids have told me there was a third one. So this was a conversation that happened yesterday. And I said, I know there's a third one. I just don't talk about it. I don't talk about the third one on the podcast. I don't talk about the third one on the blog. This person said, why? And then stopped. And I looked at the person, and the person said that the third angel wants you not to forget it, wants you to talk about it. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know a lot about this angel. And this person said, the angel said, you do know about it. And I said, no, I don't. And the angel said through this person yesterday, yes, you do. And I said, okay, what do I know about this third angel? And then I stopped to think about it. And I said, well, I know that the kids told me this third angel guards me outside. And this person said, yep. And there's more that you know about it. And I said, well, yeah, but I don't know. Like I've had dreams about some of the things that the kids have told me, and I don't remember ever dreaming about this third one. And then this person said, yes, you know. So then I said, wait a minute. Have you been reading my blog? And this person said, what blog? And what is a blog? So you see how I get confirmation? This person didn't even know what a blog is, let alone that I had a blog, and was like, well, what's the website? I need to read it. Are you talking about the little girl that was looking out the window one day and told you to look at the kids outside? And I'm sitting there like, how did you know about that? And this person said, because your angel was saying that's me. That's who she was talking to. And I was like, whoa, now how the heck would you know that? Because if you don't even know I have a blog, or you don't even know what a blog is, how would you even know that I talked about that on the blog? And I didn't give a lot of detail. If you guys have read the blog, that's the child that I tested. I don't remember if it's H-I-G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It might be, it's G or H. I was testing a little girl, and the little girl pulled me to the window to see all the kids outside playing, and was telling me that all the kids had God's angels around them. If you remember that story, that's what this person was referring to, but didn't tell the story like I saw it, or I was there, or like I wrote it up on the blog. And so this person didn't know that I had a blog or a podcast. So this stuff continues to happen to me. And I said to this person, my goodness, how did you know? If you didn't know I had a blog or anything, how did you know that happened to me? And that was back in St. Louis, and that was, gosh, long time ago. And the person said, because your angel told me. So this kind of stuff happens to me all the time. And so I said, I still don't know why I'm the chosen one, but I guess I am. But now I can deal with it better. and help other people to understand why it happens. And there was some other stuff that happened with this person yesterday. Some stuff that happened today, and then there were two other people who told me some stuff between yesterday and today about things that they can do, but also about some of the things that people that they work with can do. Can you see how it keeps happening to me? And so when I write these stories, I used to have these really nice pictures because sometimes, so if you work with kids and sometimes they can't actually tell you what's going on verbally, because kids remember, they especially when they're traumatized, they won't always tell you exactly what happened verbally. You can have them draw pictures. And I used to have, when I was located in building 2, I used to have kids draw me all these really nice pictures of different things that they would see in their houses and at school. I used to have pictures of school buses where one little boy drew a school bus. And if you think about a school bus, when you get in it and you turn left and you look down the hallway, what do you not the hallway, you look down the aisle of the bus, there was a picture of a dark angel with his wings spread out in the middle of the bus. And I was like, whoa, that's creepy. I can kill myself because I did not keep all of those pictures. One little girl drew me a picture of, oh, it was a white piece of paper with an angel, a big like white angel with it glowed, kind of like coming down to the clouds, and it just kind of glowed. She was trying to tell me that that was God's angel, and this is what, oh, my hair is driving me nuts, and this is what she could see when she opened her eyes. So I had all kinds of pictures like that. So sometimes when they can't actually tell you things, have them write it down, including suspicious of, if you're suspicious of abuse, sexual or physical. Sometimes kids will draw really dark pictures. So with dark angels, they would try to draw like a bird or try to draw as best as they could a person with wings, but then they would draw it really dark and scary. And some of them would have red eyes or bright yellow eyes, just a lot of different scary pictures. And I wish I had them because I would have added them to, this blog or this podcast. But yeah, I mean, lots of experiences. So when you hear me talk about growing up in psychology, this is how I grew up in psychology. And so what I decided to do was to take all of this, all of these experiences, and instead of going into private practice, go back into schools and work with the school children. And when I go back into schools and work with school children, there are always kids who tell me that they can see ghosts, even today. So I am going to leave you all with that. Next week, and yes, I said today. So I actually have another nebulous child on my hands today. But just know I can't talk about it. It's too soon for me to talk about it. Okay, no, blog number 30 is where I'm going to ask some questions that I answer some questions that I got off of Quora. This was back in September. I get a lot of questions on Quora. I love that website. So I'm going to be answering those, and we'll talk in more detail about those next week. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Hey, you guys have a good night. Don't forget the podcast will probably be 5:30 Central next week. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye. Thank you.